What's up, guys? Dave Lipson here, and welcome to another session of Q&A with Dave, the series where you guys, the Thunder Bro community, get to ask me any questions regarding training, nutrition, or lifestyle to help you bring thunder in and out of the gym. So this week's question comes from one of our Muscle Anarchy members who is essentially asking, hey, Dave, why is leg day so bad? We're known for having just epic leg day sessions at Muscle Anarchy. We work on a split where it's Monday through Friday, legs, chest, back, shoulders, arms, just respectively. Some people throw a rest day in between there, but basically we're doing legs once a week. So when we do it really hard and heavy, and it is just annihilation. A lot of people are kind of limping around for 1 or 2 days after and really not feeling fully recovered, not until like the end of the week. So by the time the next Monday comes around, they feel great, they're ready to destroy themselves again, and it kind of rinses and repeats. So let's talk about this from a couple different perspectives. The place I want to start with is just an understanding of why leg day is so important for muscle growth in general, just systemically across the whole body. The whole concept of anabolism and the ability of the body to build itself up really provides a very powerful catalyst for that. So what you'll find is that, every athlete that is stacked with muscle, right? They all usually do the same thing. They have a big leg day, especially athletes that are, I don't want to classify people as one thing or the other, but especially natural athletes, you need to have a good, hard, and heavy leg day at least once a week to naturally stimulate the correct internal chemistry in the body to help it grow. So I want to kind of talk about a little bit of the science behind how and why leg day does this, and then kind of frame it with how you should attack your leg days. So first off, all right, leg day is probably the most compound day that you're going to do in an entire training week. If you think about the amount of muscle that's involved, these are the largest muscles of the body. And a lot of people think just because they're training primarily their legs, that one, they're not using a lot of these other muscles in their body, or their legs will grow, but their other body parts won't. And that's completely false. It's not true. You use something like a back squat, you have so many things involved and engaged. You have your quads, your hamstrings, your calves, your back muscles, your biceps, your abdominals. It's really like an entire body. Although the primary joints moving are going to be the hip and the knee, and a little bit at the ankle, everything else is kind of working in what we call a static or isometric contraction. You're demonstrating good midline stability or core strength. So you're training your entire body when you're doing that, and you're recruiting a ton of muscle. And because of that, that's why on leg day, you can move a lot of weight. You move a lot of weight doing variations of back squats and deadlifts and lunges. Like that just speaks to the amount of muscle and the coordination that's involved here. So for one, that's why it's so powerful and potent in terms of total body muscle growth, is because it involves so much muscle, and it really uses a lot of loading and intensity, which systemically across your body, we talk about that adaptation response. The body wants to do one thing, it wants to survive. So when you smash it with a good leg day, it says, oh shit, I got to fortify these joints. I got to fortify this tissue. This is too much. I got to grow to be able to adapt to this. And that's really why it needs to be awful. Now, here's a little bit more into the science of what's happening, not just from like a mechanical standpoint, but from a hormonal standpoint, okay? When you do something like a leg day where you're moving good amounts of weight and you're having to coordinate muscles, there's a lot of central nervous system activation here. When you do something athletic as like a back squat, it's not just about being strong, but it's about flexibility, coordination, balance. They all come into play. And as you get better at back squatting, you learn to move a little bit more efficiently. But there's a lot of kind of central nervous system coordinative work going on. In addition to the stimulus of loading, your body has these really smart sensors and muscles called Golgi tendon organelles, or mechanosensors, that are communicating with the brain. They're telling them, your brain, how many motor units need to fire to be able to move this weight? What's the synchronicity between these motor units? How fast, how hard do they actually need to fire? And because of that, you get a huge spike, or what we call a neuro-brain endocrine response, endocrine referring to hormones. You start to secrete some really anabolic hormones, specifically starting to garner, be a catalyst to the production of growth hormone, That's kind of self-explaining right there, right? Growth hormone, the hormone that helps your body grow, testosterone, right, in your gonads, and that production gets enhanced a little bit. So when you hit a good leg day, essentially what you'll find is that there will first be a little bit of a dip and then a huge spike in these hormones. That's the neuroendocrine response, which again kind of creates the right internal chemistry that's ideal for muscle growth. Obviously, these things combined with the right kind of diet and a caloric surplus with enough protein and the right level of rest and recovery in between. Like I said, we rest a full week before we smash legs again, allows for good healing and remodeling of tissue. And you'll be surprised to find that like training legs well often results in like bigger arms because of this type of systemic response. Now, how do you get this systemic response? How much is too much? How much is not enough? Well, it's very relative to the athlete, but I can tell you that it has to suck. Just think about that for a second. It has to be really hard. If there's one day of the week that I dread, and I know a lot of our athletes do, it's leg day, because we will take you there. Take you to the point oftentimes you'll find, at least myself, like I'm often come near puking on leg day because there's so much buildup of work, the byproducts of muscle contraction, hydrogen, lactic acid, the way we're kind of pushing the capacity for this stuff. That intensity reverberates through the body, and you can feel it. Nothing really hits you like a good leg day. Typically what we'll do to be able to get this is we'll focus on a couple really simple functions of the legs. So as I mentioned before, there's variations of squatting. Russians call them knee bends, right? But you have the idea of raising and lowering your center of mass. And you'll see this occur through something as traditional as back squats, front squats. We can change the mechanism a little bit to target different parts of the legs and things like sissy squats or hack squats. But there's always going to be some variation of the squatting movement in each leg day, because that's one of the major functions. Usually involves a little bit more of the quads and the calves, so muscles in the front side of the body, and obviously the calves on the back of the leg. That is great for really hammering those. There's also a ton of hip and hamstring, but really good at kind of targeting the quad development, okay? In contrast to that, there are hinging-based movements, right? And this is things where you are primarily just bending at the hip. Oftentimes you'll find that your back is going to remain completely straight and static. That's for the sake of safety and moving lots of weight. But the primary joint that's moving is the hip, and you'll see this in variations of deadlifting and RDLs and good mornings. And here we're targeting really the back of the leg in the hamstring, the glute, the erectors, really getting work there, so you're able to kind of balance those things out. And then there's always the single leg movements, okay? Single leg movements are really important because they require a lot of balance, but it's also great application, kind of developing skills that translate well outside the gym, because there's not many sports that don't occur on like a single leg, right? If you look at any athletic sports, people are moving around, jumping, even sport and life fighting, you're usually not in a perfectly matched stance, but you're in some kind of split stance. You're working on one leg when you're running, you're jumping. If I was a baseball player, I was throwing. It's very kind of similar stuff. And it's a way to work on asymmetries. You have one leg that's stronger than the other, work on range of motion restrictions. You have one leg that might be more flexible, and just a tremendous developer, depending on what variation of a single leg movement you're doing. You could be targeting more hamstring than quad, or vice versa. I'd say the majority of the work we do on single legs is just great developers of the quads, the quad sweeps, that type of stuff. And then there's all the ancillary things, right? The kind of targeting just a single muscle group, like a hamstring curl, a banded hamstring curl, a machine hamstring curl, targeting things like, okay, just the hip, maybe a hip bridge, or the calves, right? Seated calf raises. And those kind of are the garnish, or the after effect. When we're doing the sets, it's important that you challenge yourself in a way that you're unaccustomed to, okay? If you're always doing 5x5 back squat at the same weight, you're not going to really be challenging yourself. If you're always doing the same volume of work, you're not going to be challenging yourself. So we really hammer, although the framework are those specific varieties of movements categorized by squatting, hinging, and single leg, you'll find that there's a lot of variety where every week we go on. It's kind of terrible in a different way. Maybe it's terrible because of the high repetitions. Maybe we're challenging people through different ranges of motion. Maybe it incorporates things like isometric holds. Maybe it's more of a top set where you're doing as many reps or as heavy as you can possibly go. But we really hammer people on leg day by challenging them through those major exercises where there's going to be one or two sets that are intended to be just awful. And that is the catalyst for the adaptation, right? The body will follow suit. You ask it to do something it doesn't want to do, then it will respond accordingly. And that's why leg days have to be so awful. And that's the reason, to answer your question, why are our leg days in Muscle Anarchy so bad? Well, I think one, they're really bad because of the variety of ways in which we try to challenge you. Okay, oftentimes the people that are doing our stuff with Muscle Anarchy, we use a lot of different methods that a lot of them have never done, so it kicks their ass right off the bat. The second thing is just having a good understanding of, we hit a lot of volume on leg day, and most people are not accustomed to that level of volume. And even when they are, now it comes time to, okay, you're used to it, now the weight goes up, right? Or the repetitions are increasing. I think that's the main reason why these leg days are so epic. Also, a lot of our athletes are coming from a framework where they're training legs sometimes like every day or a couple times a week. And there's a give and take there. Obviously, you train them more often, but oftentimes the training isn't as voluminous or as intense, or it doesn't allow you the time to heal and remodel, which again will affect your intensity and ability to express that capacity. So I think our formula really speaks for itself, and the comments we're getting just validate what we already know, is that, the leg days are epic. They're really, really hard. They take a while to kind of recover, and that just speaks to the potency of them. But every time Monday comes back around, nobody's not ready, right? And the other cool thing that we do is because of the volume and the different ways and mechanisms, often using tempos and things that don't just involve putting more weight on or moving as fast as you can, it can be very therapeutic to people who have broken down their knees, who have broken down their back, where we're actually taking the time to allow these critical joints to fortify and thicken through the hypertrophic process. And it's not just a thickening of the muscle tissue, but it's also a thickening of the connective tissue by doing the exercises in the way that we're prescribing them, which is biasing muscle hypertrophy or the enlargement of muscle cells and tissue. And that's it, guys. So there it is, the 12-minute answer to the one-sentence question. Why is leg day so awful? Also, the title of this video, why is it so important? So next time you're in the gym, if you want bigger arms, you better be doing your leg day. If you want, no matter what it is, if your goal is to put on some size, it's probably one of the most critical days. If I distill down, sometimes we have athletes ask, hey, you run a 5-day split, but I only have 3 days to train. What should I do? They would come down to the big major muscle groups, legs, chest, and back. Those three alone are so potent, enough large muscles to really get a good stimulus. If you're doing those simple things well, the ancillary add-ons, the arm day, the shoulder day, they're less important relative to what you get out of these really large muscle groups. That's why I think chest day is really bad too. I think back day is really bad too, because they have to be for them to be effective. So that's it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Hit us up with more questions. I know each week we give you the opportunity in our announcements to ask a question we'll feature on Q&A with Dave. Be sure to let us know what you thought. Comment below. If you hate leg day, throw a meme in of our Anarchy leg days. And thanks for tuning in. We will see you next week for some more of that sweet, sweet Muscle Anarchy talk.